Alright, let's jump right into this explainer. I want you to imagine an empire that completely rewired the cultural and political DNA of the medieval world and did it in the blink of an eye. Picture a map in your mind. We're talking about a state stretching all the way from the Iberian Peninsula in the west, sweeping completely across the Middle East and reaching deep into Central Asia, right up to the very borders of India in the east. It was an absolutely massive expanse of land, home to incredibly diverse peoples. Today, we're unpacking the epic story of Umayyad Caliphate. We'll be looking at its explosive rise, its golden achievements, the intense internal friction that tore it all apart, and finally, its almost unbelievable rebirth. You know, what's truly staggering about this empire comes down to a single number: 3. At its greatest extent, this centralized state didn't just swallow up a few neighboring territories. It spanned enormous chunks of 3 entirely different continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's genuinely mind-blowing when you really stop and think about it. Imagine trying to govern that kind of space without the internet, without phones, or even modern transportation. You're relaying orders, moving troops, and collecting taxes by horseback and sailing ship across thousands of miles of scorching deserts, towering mountain ranges, and totally unpredictable seas. To manage a sprawling geographical giant like that, it requires a level of administration and military prowess that was practically unmatched in the medieval world. And the craziest part, they did it all with astonishing speed. They built the whole thing in less than 100 years. Seriously, let that time frame sink in. To put that into perspective, the Roman Empire took many, many centuries of gradual, grinding, bloody expansion to finally reach its zenith across the Mediterranean. The Umayyads, they built one of the medieval world's largest empires in just a fraction of that time. It's a staggering reality. Expanding at this breakneck pace, they completely redrew the global map in just a few short generations. So how exactly did they pull this off? Part 1: Birth of an Empire. Okay, so this dynasty didn't just appear out of thin air. It actually emerged directly out of a highly intense period of political conflict in the early Islamic world. Walking through this timeline gives us a perfect snapshot of how rapid yet structured their growth really was. It all kicks off in 661 CE when Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan becomes caliph. He makes this absolutely crucial strategic move by establishing the Umayyad dynasty and leveraging a highly disciplined Syrian army to centralize his power. Oh, and he also shifts the capital to Damascus, which completely changed the empire's center of gravity. Fast forward just 30 years to 691 CE, and the state is already wealthy and stable enough to construct monumental architecture, like the glittering Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Then, jump forward just 20 more years to 711 CE, and their forces are already crossing the strait into Europe, stepping right onto the Iberian Peninsula. Muawiyah and the rulers who followed him effectively turned the caliphate into this powerful centralized machine, tightening their grip over vast territories they inherited from earlier Muslim rulers. So, if centralized power, right? But how did they handle actually pushing those borders outward? Part 2: Expanding across 3 continents. Under the Umayyads, Muslim armies launched a brilliant and honestly super aggressive 2-front expansion. To the west, they swept across the incredibly diverse landscapes of North Africa. And by 711 CE, they boldly crossed into the Iberian Peninsula, where they completely dismantled the ruling Visigothic kingdom. This wasn't just some quick raid, it was a massive historical turning point that established Al-Andalus, kicking off literally centuries of vibrant Muslim rule in the region. But at the exact same time, over in the east, Umayyad armies were pushing relentlessly through Central Asia, extending their reach all the way to regions bordering the Indus Valley. They were maneuvering efficiently in completely different theaters of war thousands of miles apart. But, as we know, an empire isn't just about relentless military conquest. It needs a beating heart. Part 3: The Golden Age of Damascus. Damascus blossomed into the undisputed political and cultural center of the Umayyad world. It grew into an incredibly vital hub for administration, trade, and scholarship. And their cultural ambitions really radiated outward. I mean, one of the dynasty's absolute greatest architectural achievements was the Dome of the Rock, completed between 691 and 692 CE under Caliph Abd al-Malik. With its gleaming golden dome catching the Middle Eastern sun and its walls covered in intricate, mesmerizing mosaics, it still stands today. It's a stunning visual reminder of the sheer wealth, power, and artistic vision of the Umayyad state during this golden era. So here is the real puzzle. How do you hold all of this together? You've got different cultures, different continents, and completely different languages. Before the Umayyads really tightened up their administration, the system was, well, kind of chaotic. Government business was largely being conducted in Greek and Persian, and merchants were out there trading with wildly varied regional currencies. But Caliph Abd al-Malik changed the whole game with some brilliant administrative reforms. First, Arabic was elevated to become the dominant language in government administration, which finally unified the official record-keeping. They also developed highly organized systems for taxation and communication, and, this was huge, they introduced standardized Islamic coinage. I'm talking about the distinctive gold dinars and silver dirhams. These reforms were the vital glue that created a unified administrative system across territories that contained deeply diverse peoples. But of course, history tells us that rapid expansion almost always comes with a heavy price. Part 4. Rebellion and Collapse. Despite its enormous size and incredible wealth, the state faced serious, mounting challenges from the inside. There were vastly different communities with competing political and economic interests. For instance, you had newly converted non-Arab Muslims, known as Mawali, who frequently felt marginalized by the Arab-centric Umayyad elite. And when you stretch an empire that far, things are gonna snap. Regional rebellions, like the fierce Kharijite uprisings, inevitably sparked across the territories. Add to that deep leadership disputes within the wider Muslim community regarding who actually rightfully deserved to rule. Because of all this internal friction, their legendary military expansion eventually just stalled out. Opposition to Umayyad rule, which was heavily agitated by the Abbasid faction, just continued to grow and grow until it reached a fatal boiling point. And this boiling point leads us to a dramatic climax, but also to a highly unexpected continuation. Part 5. The Iberian Rebirth. Okay, this is genuinely, hands down, one of the most thrilling survival stories in all of history. By the middle of the 8th century, a powerful revolutionary movement sweeps through the state. In 750 CE, the Abbasid revolution entirely defeats the Umayyad forces at the decisive Battle of Dazab. The Umayyad dynasty in the Eastern Caliphate collapses completely, and the new rulers go to extreme lengths to eliminate the remaining Umayyad family. I mean, it seems like the definitive end. The whole shebang is over. But one young member of the family, Abd al-Rahman I, manages this harrowing escape. Evading capture, he makes a perilous, years-long journey across North Africa, and against literally all odds, he crosses into Iberia. By 756 CE, this lone survivor actually manages to unite local factions and establishes an independent Umayyad emirate in Al-Andalus, making Córdoba his spectacular new capital. The Umayyad legacy didn't just vanish, it was dramatically reborn in the West, where it would continue to flourish for centuries. So what should you take away from all this? Why does it matter? Well, the Umayyad Caliphate fundamentally transformed the political and cultural map of the medieval world. They essentially bridged the gap between the ancient and the modern. Their vast expansion permanently connected distant regions, forging massive networks of trade that moved goods all the way from India to Spain. They streamlined administration, they sparked scholarship, and they left behind awe-inspiring architecture. But crucially, the stability and connectivity they introduced facilitated the transfer of classical knowledge. That knowledge would ultimately fuel later global trade, and even help set the stage for the Renaissance. They altered human history in very tangible, very enduring ways. Which leaves us with this final thought. How does a fallen empire from 1,000 years ago still shape our modern cultural map today? Think about it. The original caliphate, based in Damascus, lasted for less than a single century, yet its influence rippled through time. It continued vibrantly through the Umayyad state of Córdoba, and its administrative, architectural, and cultural innovations laid the very groundwork for civilizations that developed across the Islamic world and far beyond. It is a powerful reminder for us today. While political borders and dynasties may rise and fall in the blink of an eye, the profound cultural and structural foundations they leave behind, those can shape the world for millennia.